Why are palm colors getting afraid all of a sudden? Have you ever heard of the notion of palm color oppression? Now, palm color people are getting awakened to this notion of palm color oppression after the recent realizations of the discussions, especially surrounding the elections. And when it comes to the erasure of the history and the culture of the indigenous people and people of African descent, a lot of palm colors are getting concerned because the privilege that was birthed out of the slavery that was resulted of that oppression that was orchestrated against indigenous Americans is now being threatened. The palm color privilege is under fire, that's what I mean. And because of this threat, some palm colors are thinking of fleeing the land of the free. But when you think about it, it's not even actually just fleeing, it's also a privilege in a way. Because this palm color person is describing it in a way that he actually acknowledges that he was privileged, but now that privilege is under fire. Let me play you his video and leave your thoughts in the comment section and tell me what you think.
Considering fleeing this country, consider this. What we're facing right now is exactly what marginalized people have faced for centuries. It's what this country was founded, built, and maintained on. The privilege that we all inherit as white people here was bought with the exact type of oppression that we now fear. So what would it mean for us to flee when the tactics that bought our grandparents the privilege we inherit finally impact us? What would it mean for us as a people to come to a land, commit the most horrifying crimes against humanity in the history of the world against indigenous people here, run it into a fascist state for the benefit for a select group of people, and then take our privilege and flee, abandoning the most impacted people to suffer the brunt of those consequences when it threatens us? Just think about these things when you consider running away from this. Also, the world is round. There's nowhere you can go where you will escape the terrors of a fully fascist U.S. empire.
Doesn't really matter at what point I stitch this video. This dude's on some serious shit. He's smoking the ganja, that kush, that good green, whatever you want to call it. That's what he's on. He's done the peyote, smoked the peace pipe, done some magic shrooms, that, stinky, that skunk, whatever. This dude's on it because I don't have any privilege because of my grandfather. My grandfather died like in 77. What does my grandfather have to do with privilege? I've got no privilege because of anybody. And I'm not considering fleeing this country because the only thing wrong with this country is people like him. We just need to get rid of people like him and the country's fine. That's all there is to it, plain and simple. So I don't know what he's talking about. I don't think anybody with any common sense knows what he's talking about. I don't think he knows what he's talking about. The only fascist is him because he believes in privilege. So, just you shouldn't listen to stupid people. This guy's stupid, right? We know he is. It doesn't really matter at what point I stitch this video. This dude's on some serious...
I have never seen the most truth in a very short form video that has been spouted from this man. Like, it's just, there's so much truth in one thing. It's just like we have to actually consider, if you're white and you decide that you're going to flee this country and you're white, cis, heterosexual, non-LGBT and stuff, and you're just going to flee because we're fascists, right? Let's put it this way, we're in the beginning stages of fascism. Then, yeah, basically what you're doing is you're just exercising your privilege and leaving everyone else behind. No, you don't flee. For everyone else, I'm going to respectfully ask you not to flee, but I understand if you are trans or black, indigenous, person of color, and you do flee, I understand. I'm not going to hold that against you. But I am going to ask you respectfully to stand and fight. We don't have much of a choice. A fully fascist American empire would mean war. it's hard to discuss the consequences of the United States going fascist. You'd think our wars are bad now. Yeah. Wait till the Christian evangelicals use nuclear weaponry on, I don't know, the entire Middle East because they're Muslim. I am not a fan of Islam. I'm definitely not a fan of Islam. But you know what I definitely not a fan of? Racism, hating people just because they believe in something different than you. I don't hate Muslims, just like I don't hate Christianity. I strongly hate the religion, but I don't hate the people. And I think people could use the religion, or use religion to very good means. I know a lot of great, amazing Muslims who make great couscous and great food and stuff, and we share each other's food all the time. But I personally haven't discussed it. It's Islam, right? Christian fundamentalists, Christian nationalists, Christian theocrats can't tell the difference between a person and a collective. And they can't tell the difference between a collective and an idea. They don't understand the difference between it. So when they dislike Islam, they blame every individual that happens to share the majority ethnic group of Islam. And what they're going to respond by is not by evangelizing them anymore. No, they're way past that. They're going to respond by fire. They're going to respond by brimstone. They're going to bring hell to them. They're not going to care about the environment. They're going to pollute all the environments. They'll cut down the entire Amazon. They don't care.
I have to admit, with the beard and the hat, it took me a minute to figure out who you were, but it's the voice. And I love your content, but I'm going to take exception with you saying that we committed the most horrible atrocities in the history of mankind to the indigenous people here. That's not true. First, and this may feel like a technicality to you, America wasn't a country that was done. It started with the Spanish before the British colonies even existed. And by the time the British got here, the Native American, indigenous, whatever you want to call them, and people that were here were sick of white people. So the British didn't necessarily get a chance. And I'm not excusing what happened here. But I want to point out something that a lot of people seem to not understand. And I get it, because we do have white privilege and shit like that. But, you know, I'm a mythology and folklore guy. And I actually have a degree in mythology and folklore. And, where I was going with this. I remember now. We talk about the loss of the culture of the indigenous people. I mean, I was even thinking about it today, because we talk about the loss of the culture of the African American who was enslaved. And, you know, that thing's going around TikTok, that Iko Iko song. And that song, the language in that song is language from the indigenous and black tribes of Louisiana. And so they did lose their culture, but it wasn't all to white oppression. A lot of it was in an effort to try to, the word I want to use is acclimatize, but that's not the right word. But the easy definition is to fit in, right? When the Irish came here, they were excluded because they were Irish, and the British didn't consider them human beings. But once they learned the language, lost their accent, they, integrated. That's the word I'm looking for. They integrated. And it was easy for them because they had light skin. Same thing with the Italians. Once they learned the language, got rid of the accent, they just looked like, darker from white people. They didn't necessarily look like, people of color, even though technically they are, right? They're Italians or Hispanic. Well, not Hispanic, but they're Latin, right? They're Latino because it's the same thing with the French. They're basically Latin. Their language comes from, and all of those areas are Latin because Rome committed the worst atrocities in the history of the world. I mean, crucifixion was invented by the Romans. Well, I don't think it was technically invented by the Romans, but it was most popularized by the Romans. And let's not forget that they created the Catholic Church, which the Catholic Church has done more up than any other organization in the world.
The recent conversations around palm color oppression, particularly regarding the erasure of indigenous cultures and the legacy of slavery, have sparked growing concerns among palm color people. Now, this unease is rooted in a recognition that palm color privilege, which has historically been built upon the marginalization and cultural loss of others, is now being critically examined and challenged, if you may put it. Because when you think about it, after building their societies and everything that is known in the palm color world by using slavery, right? Palm colors didn't know what to do with the people that remained afterwards, right? And after slavery was abolished, palm colors never really knew what to expect in the future. But now, it seems like the tables might be turning, with activists group bringing awareness to these concerns, and as well as information spreading via social media and the discussions that are being had online. That injustice is being scrutinized, and now palm colors are seeing that. As discussions around cultural erasure and systemic inequalities become more prominent, palm colored people may feel apprehensive about potential shifts in societal dynamics and the impact that these changes could have on their own standing and privilege on a social landscape. So, the uncertainty surrounding upcoming elections only heightens these concerns. With potential changes in leadership, whether through Democrats or another party, comes this possibility of significant policy shifts that could alter the landscape of racial and cultural equity. This uncertainty creates anxiety among palm color people who might fear that their previously unexamined advantages could be scrutinized or disrupted. And in this case, I mean the privilege. Like, just think about it. If Kamala Harris wins right now, that privilege could be under scrutiny or under fire. So, and now I think they are seeing the potential of that happening, and perhaps that's the reason why there is growing concern, especially with that palm color person that raised this concern. Now, let's look at fascism and why some people in the land of the free feel that the land of the free has become such a nation. So the increasing divide between political ideologies has led to heightened rhetoric, with some viewing the actions of the opposing side as authoritarian or fascist. So in this case, political reasons are some of the things. Now, the other thing is concerns about the undermining of democratic institutions, such as attacks on the free press, judiciary, and electoral processes, have contributed to fears of a slide towards fascism. Now, the other thing that I want to point to before we get deep into this is Project 2025, I guess, because with that project being implemented, anything can be done, and the government will never be held accountable. So the rise of leaders who exhibit authoritarian tendencies, such as undermining checks and balances, promoting nationalism, and using divisive rhetoric, has fueled these fears. And this is what I was talking about. Now, the other thing is actions perceived as infringing on civil liberties and human rights, such as aggressive immigration policies, police brutal unaliving, and restrictions on protests, have also contributed to these concerns, because this is freedom of speech here being under fire, freedom of expression, right? Because you do know that in the past, like when you take it way back in the past, especially when we look at palm coloreds were more privileged, even when it comes to expressing themselves freely online or even in the public. But now they are being held accountable, and not forgetting the backlash that most of them have faced because of the way they've expressed themselves in the past. So they might be getting concerned because of this. Some of the reasons as to why palm coloreds might want to immigrate. So concerns about personal safety and the protection of civil liberties can drive individuals to seek refuge in other countries which are perceived as more stable and democratic. There's also the desire to live in a political environment that aligns more closely with one's values and beliefs, which can motivate people to immigrate, right? There's also fears about economic instability and the potential for authoritarian policies to negatively impact the economy, which can also be a factor. But looking at thinking and beliefs and how the mind is designed, and this is just my perspective and my take, is the fact that whatever you think about the most, especially when a whole community thinks about it, it is very likely to happen. So the more palm colors get afraid of these potential things happening, I think the more the likelihood of these things will happen, right? Especially like right now. We're seeing more and more palm colors having no voice, especially in politics, especially in public discourse. I guess that's one of the reasons as to why they may be getting concerned and might want to leave. And that's what I think for me leads to the brutal treatment of marginalized groups, especially black people. Because more and more palm colors think and feel that black people are getting opportunities that they never used to have. So perhaps the tables might be turning. Right. And this is just my take, like I said. But to summarize everything, I have come to the conclusion of our discussion now. So please tell me your thoughts and I'll see you in the next video. Please like, share, and subscribe. Signing off. Take care.